What a nightmare it can be trying to find images. We all do it. We take our pictures, we file them away somewhere, and then subsequently we hope we can find them. And we spend far, far too much time hunting around through the files, hoping that something will emerge. Just a quick example. This is my own computer here, and if I go into File, Browse, I've set up the computer so that I have one disk, quite a large disk. It's, I don't know, 100 gigabytes, something like that, but quite a large disk with lots of storage space, and that I have made into my photo storage disk exclusively. So at least I know that if I want a photograph of this machine, it's in here somewhere. Well, that would be true, of course, except that I've also got CD drives, and if you put a CD in, that's going to have pictures on as well, because they're all backed up. You don't just leave them on your computer without any sort of backup for them. But even so, even having set that out, if I click on that disk and open it, look at this nightmare here. I have folder after folder after folder that I've created, and many of these are subdivided, and some of them still haven't been sorted from photo shoots that I've done from time to time. And they just go on, and you scroll off the end here, and it just seems to go on forever. That's the state we're in. You want a photograph, you click on the folder, you go hunting around looking for the photo that may or may not be in that folder, and so it goes on. Now we're going to show you a better way. It doesn't have to be like that. It would be very convenient if instead of hunting through this file browser, good though it is, it would be much more convenient if we could go back to the old photo CD days, when Kodak, bless them, used to put on the front of the CD package tiny little thumbnails that you could just look through, and they showed you instantly what was on the disk. We can do that. Let's just close that down, and let's just come across here. Under the File menu, there are some interesting automate commands. We've looked at some of them before, but one that we haven't looked at so far is this one, Contact Sheet 2. Contact Sheet 1 was in the earlier version of Photoshop and not as good. You simply click on it, and this big box opens up. I'm just going to relocate it down here somewhere, and this is it. The whole thing is done from here. You don't even need to have a picture on screen. It isn't important. It will do everything for you. Now, what's this all about? Well, perhaps this is the first thing you see and look at. Over here you have an outline of the page that is going to be created, and each of these little grey squares here, the little rectangles, represent an image on that page. But it doesn't have to be in this format. We can decide the format. We set it up to suit ourselves. In this particular case, there are 5 images across the top and what, about 8 down the sides, and there they are. 5 columns, the ones coming down, 8 rows, the ones going across. So we've got a total of 40 images on any one page. Let's stick with the CD one for now. Supposing I wanted to make an insert to go into a CD case, the standard case, on which we could have thumbnail images of all the pictures on that disk. Wouldn't that be great? Well, here's the way it's done. First of all, we set up the disk cover. If you measure one of them, you'll find they're 12 centimeters by 12 centimeters. They will fit in exactly if you do that. And if we put those measurements into here, 12 by 12, and then insert a resolution which is printable, and it doesn't need to be any bigger than 96. You could make this larger and say, well, I'm going to get better quality prints, but in reality these images are so compressed and so tiny that you really aren't going to get anything from them. Remember what these are for. They're purely thumbnail images to allow you to identify the pictures that are on that disk. On that disk rather. Nothing more than that. We can decide on RGB or grayscale or CMYK and whatever. Why would you change it? If they're RGB now, leave them as RGB. If they're grayscale, leave them as grayscale. And we can see on the front here what they are, and we can make the necessary conversions when we get them into Photoshop. Flatten layers is important. You don't be messing about with layers here. This is an invitation for Photoshop to say whatever the state this particular picture is in, flatten it down before you do all this. And that's good. It speeds things up. The Photoshop just quickly compresses the whole thing down to a single layer, and then it's able to do its work. It does not affect the image that's left on the disk. The image that's left on the disk is exactly as it was before. How does the computer know where the pictures are coming from? Well, it does it via this button here. If we just go back one to the source folder, We can tell the computer where we want the images to come from by pressing the Browse button. And this gives access to the whole of your computer structure. So in my case, I've directed the computer to a CD, which I burnt myself. There's the numbers for it there, which is sitting in the hard drive, in the computer at the moment, and it happens to have 3 or 4 files on it. I could click on the main one here, and in the software, tell it to look at all the sub-files. I'm not going to do that because it would take too long when it comes to actually copying it for you to sit there and watch the screen repeating an action. So I'm going to click on the first one of these, and just the images that are in this particular file will be recorded onto our contact sheet. Okay, so I've selected it. I click OK. If I wanted any other, even if it was something from the hard disk itself, you just select it and then click OK. There it is, look. I've told it to go to the D drive, which happens to be a CD drive, to look at that particular folder and this subfolder within it. If you've got Include All Subfolders clicked, then it will pick up anything that's within that, but in this case there aren't any, so I'm not worried. Right, we've dealt with source, we've dealt with the document itself, we know what we're going to get, a 12 centimeter square illustration. But we haven't told the computer yet how we want them positioned. You can choose to put them either across the page, so they will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that and down to the next line, conventional reading in fact, or you could, if you wish, decide to put them down first and they will read down this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again in the next column and this column and so on. It makes sense normally to leave it in the across mode. Then you decide how many pictures you want. Now this is up to you. If you want the pictures to be large so that you can view them easily, then you're not going to get very many on a sheet of this size. If, on the other hand, you make them too small, they're going to be unusable. So that we can see them clearly in this exercise, I'm simply going to make it 5 by 5. This will give us images large enough to see, and we can actually see the process happening without waiting too long. Incidentally, this is just the size of the individual images, if you're wondering what that's all about. And then finally, down the bottom here, before we press the button, you can choose to have the file name as a caption or not. Now, if you're going to be using them for identification purposes, to be honest, it makes a lot of sense to leave that on. But it's entirely up to you. Your choice. You can choose the font, as usual, and you can choose the font size. And I've left it in a basic font that's easy to read and a fairly small file size. What happens when I press the button? Well, here we go. You click on there and you can see what's happening. These images are being dragged off the hard disk and put onto this flat 12 centimeter square sheet of paper, which will then go into the inside of my plastic case and will serve as a permanent record. Now notice what happened then. There were only 27 images on this in this particular file, and the first 25 went onto here as we laid them out, 5 in each column, 5 in each row, with the titles underneath. They didn't have titles, they're called untitled with numbers. But as soon as it had finished the first sheet, Photoshop automatically created the second sheet and kept on going until it ran out of pictures. This is excellent. You can put a disk with dozens and dozens of images on into your hard drive, set it running, and just leave Photoshop to do the work. You can go out. It doesn't matter. When you come back, there on the screen will be all the images ready for printing. All we need to do now is simply print these off, which we do conventionally from within Photoshop, and then we insert it, and we have a permanent record of all the images on that disk. Isn't that brilliant? Okay, I'm going to close those, and we're going to go another stage. That's fine if you've got images on a CD, but there are also other occasions when we need to send images to people for whatever reason. For instance, if you're sending them off to Digital Photo for them to look at, it makes sense to have some sort of record to go with it. So if you click on here, File, Automate, Contact Sheet 2, we could send a full contact sheet, A4 if you like. Let's do it. Change the file. Let's go for something a bit different this time. I'm going to ignore the CDs and I'm going to come down to my photo storage disk, the place where I keep all my images, and we'll choose this one. These were taken recently, and I've now identified where I want the images to come from. I won't let them all go down onto the sheet of paper because it would take forever. These are quite large images straight off the digital camera. This time I don't want a 12 centimeter square format. I want an A4 sheet, so just change it. A4 is 21 by 29.7. And since they're going to digital photo, and I'd like them to be impressed, I'm going to sort of push this up a little bit here, and I'm going to go for 150. Again, there really isn't much point in printing these at 300 dpi. You're not going to see the benefit anyway. But if you want to, you can. You just push it up to wherever you want it to be. Choose pixels per inch or pixels per centimeter, entirely as you wish. I just realized I was working with centimeters there. I'm going down to 150 pixels per inch. Leave it in RGB, flatten the layers again, and now I think we'll make them a little bit bigger. We want the people looking at them to be impressed, so I'm going to go for 4 in here. And I'm going to go for, yeah, we'll leave it on 5. That's going to give us a reasonable format. These pictures are going to be about 5 centimeters by 4.5, big enough to be able to look at for an initial view and decide whether we want to see any more of them afterwards. Leave the file names on so that they can be found, and again we click OK. And here we go. Now these this time are coming straight off the hard disk and being transferred onto here. These are camera images which have not been resized at all, so they are something like 3 megabyte JPEG images which will uncompress to about 17 or 18 megabytes, and yet here's Photoshop happily putting them all down onto this sheet of paper without any problem. You'll notice it also reorientates them. It puts them all the right way up, regardless of how they were on the original. Okay, I'm going to stop it there because this will go on forever, and you stop it by pressing Escape. As soon as you press the Escape key, everything comes to a halt, and there we are. Those are the images which we've opened on A4 sheets with their titles, ready to print out and ready to be included with the disk, so that when they arrive on the editor's desk, you can look along them and say, yes, I like that one, I don't like that one, whatever. You know, at least you're giving the people at the other end a fair chance of seeing what's happening. Think about it also from the point of view of sending them to friends or family. What a lovely way to send them off. Now, there's only one problem with this, and I know somebody's going to say this, so we may as well knock it on the head now. Contact sheet is wonderful, provided that you want all these mixed images from the one file. But what if you don't? What if you have a sort of group of images that you want, but you want to be able to select them? Well, you can do one of two things. You can either pick them out first of all and put them all into a single file, or if you prefer, you can go back to the one that we've looked at before, and we'll finish this one by just reminding you of that. If I close those two down, if you have a requirement to be able to put lots of these together but in a specific format that suits you, then instead of using Contact Sheet, just have a look at our old friend Picture Package, because Picture Package also has the ability to do this. Now this is difficult because this only just about fits into the screen area at the size we're recording, but the same sort of thing applies. We still choose where we want them to come from, so we've got the same package there. We're telling it that it's coming from that folder, okay, and then choose the folder that you want it to come from as before. It's a very similar process for that part. Again, we choose the size, but you see the difference. These format here instantly. If you wanted to send a lot of images, 20 small ones, 16 small ones, whatever it is you want to do, there are all sorts of packages in here. Choose the package you want, and then instead of making them all the same like that, all you have to do to make up something like the contact sheet is to go in and click on the one that you want to change. If I go in there and click on it, I can say, no, I don't want that image. I want, can't see them. Well, switch on one of the viewing methods here. You say, no, the other one that I wanted was that one, and that will substitute itself in place of the one that was there. Unfortunately, they won't orientate themselves. You'll have to turn them around first if that's what you wanted to do, but it does work. So again, click on the next image, choose the image that you want to substitute for the one that you had there. Doesn't matter which one it is, just choose the image that you want and click OK. And that picture then falls into place. Ultimately, we do exactly the same thing. When our page is complete, and this is much more time consuming of course, when our page is complete we click OK, and when we click OK it will produce the picture package for us by taking all of those images that we've selected, resizing them and placing them onto the A4 sheet ready for printing out. So at this stage we can go out, leave it to do what it's got to do, and come back later when the whole thing is settled. If I just stop this now, we'll be able to see the start of the process. In fact, it's nearly there. We'll let it just finish off. It's just sorting itself out with the final ones. We'll stop it there. Close that. And we don't want to save that. There's the start of the second sheet. There we are. There are the pictures laid out as we dictated within that. You still end up with something similar to a contact sheet, but it allows you to position the pictures with it. Either of those methods work well, and I wish you luck with them.